Another Mark Carney tax haven? Or money laundering scheme? Or both? Welcome to Occam's Razor. This is not a story about Brookfield's office in Bermuda above a bike shop. This is regarding an office that was set up in the Isle of Man. So before we go into Ezra's story at Rebel News, where he took himself to the Isle of Man to get some on the site footage, we'll just cover exactly what the Isle of Man is known for in regards to shady business. All right, so let's bring this up here. Jossamer, this site has been doing a lot of investigations for over a decade regarding illegal gambling and money laundering on the Isle of Man. Legislations and acts have been done over the years, but really what it comes down to is this concept whereby they use what's known as a white label. A licensed UK-facing white label site is not intended to attract UK customers, but allows the gambling brand to advertise in the UK. As there are no controls on what domains can be advertised, gambling brands can use football's popularity and build betting websites which target jurisdictions where gambling is illegal. Okay, so I know right now you're completely lost. Where the hell have I gone? We're talking about Mark Carney and Brookfield and setting up an office in the Isle of Man, and here I am talking about gambling and something called the white label. So on the Isle of Man, because they seem to have different legislation, they have their own separate parliament. What they've done is they've created these white label applications in conjunctions with the UK for their gambling organizations. And even if these gambling organizations go defunct, anything that is associated with this white label legislation that they've registered under can continue to do business in the UK. It causes a lot of problems. In fact, nations all across the planet are like, why is the Isle of Man money laundering our money? So there have been a lot of investigations. And that's what happens when you set up an area that has tax shelters like this and you allow people to bring their money in to hide it, to funnel it, to evade taxes. Let's go next story here. Here we have the Isle of Man raids gambling firms and money laundering probe. You get a lot of this going on there. Another story, boost for Ireland's fight against financial crime. Seems Isle of Man has a bit of a reputation when it comes to crime. Well, you notice this word here, Manx. It's a term that they use for anyone who's from the Isle of Man. So if they refer here to the government of the Isle of Man, they just go the Manx government. Here we have the Isle of Man singles out Asia's financial crime hotbed. Yes, well, Asia in themselves have decided that, yeah, we want to do business in the Isle of Man because they like to launder money as well. Prince Group linked business rated in international money laundering probe. Now look at this picture. Second floor, first floor. These are just houses, like Ezra says in his story, and I recommend you go to Rebel News and watch the entire piece. I'm only going to cut out another small clip here. Houses downtown. You go to a local resident and goes, "Hey, would you like to be CEO?" Not hinky at all. It's the kind of business the current Prime Minister of Canada is involved in going to a place like the Isle of Man to set up a tax shelter to hide billions of dollars again from Canada. Isle of Man police raids offices of two iGaming companies. Well, seems like the Isle of Man is a pretty busy place when it comes to police raids. Police raid offices in international money laundering probe. Oh, look, somebody's house with a sign next to the door. This is our international trillion-dollar company. So we go here, and you'll see that Isle of Man's largest sector of the economy is insurance at 18.2%. Insurance is your biggest. So, of course, somebody like Brookfield would want to have their office in the Isle of Man. A company like Brookfield that is also involved in insurance Remember the little insurance scam that they have where they took over the reinsurance business of coal miners in the United States, then denying them health care so they could make their money off the backs of the workers? This is the kind of person Mark Carney is. And what do they have here? E-gaming is the second largest contributor to the island's GDP, making up 15.7% of the economy. So, international gambling, laundering its money through the Isle of Man, where Brookfield has set up yet another office. What do we have here? Mark Rutherford, acting chief Isle of Man Gambling Supervision Commission, has addressed the UN's mounting concern about the island's gambling regulations. Yeah, whatever. It's been over 20 years. They keep adding new regulations here and there, and money laundering keeps happening. Wherever there is a loophole, people will exploit it. And wherever there is an ability for a criminal to make money, they're going to exploit that too. And here we have India, Indian government investigating money laundering through the island, through the Isle of Man. Isle of Man has a lot of money laundering issues. Wonder why that is. Let's go to the clip.
Maybe you can guess where I'm going with this. Canada's new Prime Minister, who's seeking a new term, Mark Carney, he was the chairman of Brookfield Asset Management for years. It's not a household name like BlackRock Asset Management, but it's a kind of mini BlackRock. It has about $1 trillion in assets under management. And BlackRock is famous, but Brookfield, I think, should be, because through tricky corporate structures, they have made it so their assets and their profits are as tax-free as possible. There was a report that Brookfield managed to hide $25 billion by operating a shell company out of Bermuda. In fact, an independent study suggests that Brookfield, under Mark Carney's leadership, was the #1 largest tax dodger in the country. They have all sorts of corporate structures, but obviously they're not living here. They're not working here. Brookfield doesn't operate here. We're here because I want to go to a house on Belgravia Road. It's a house, I know that, even though I haven't been there yet. I looked it up on Google Maps because Brookfield IOM, Brookfield Isle of Man, is headquartered in what looks like, on Google Maps, to be someone's house. And I did some more corporate searches, and the director of Brookfield IOM is an 88-year-old man, Leslie Commons. An 88-year-old man is running an organization with billions or tens of billions of dollars. Is that for real? Well, I've learned that a lot of people in the Isle of Man have a kind of job or a series of jobs where they act as the pretend officers or directors of these foreign companies. They're just regular people who, for a certain sum of money, said, sure, I'll be your director. Sure, you can put my name down on the corporate records. I'm an 88-year-old man. You can pay me X amount of dollars a month, and I'll be the name on the piece of paper hiding the true power behind the throne.
Well, let's see how this is trending online. You see, Ezra's getting a lot of coverage here because he's put in some posts. We get some reactions, we get some coverage of his story. And here we got most popular destination, the Isle of Man for trans people seeking asylum. Interesting. Does Mark Carney have Irish citizenship so he can use the Isle of Man to hide his money? Says Chris. That's a good question. But apparently, according to Carney, he has gotten rid of his other two passports and he only has one, a Canadian passport now. I guess we'll find out after the election if he really does. Frank here says, according to Ezra Levant, the streets of the Isle of Man must be lined with supercars parked in front of mansions or all the oligarchs living there. Of all the oligarchs, that probably means to say. That's totally ridiculous, of course. Well, that's not what Ezra said in his story. He's not talking about oligarchs in his story. He's talking about a front man for Brookfield. that was set up there to be CEO. They just paid him to be CEO, gave him some shares, made him a CEO so they could use the Isle of Man as a tax haven. Nothing about oligarchs. Get your facts straight there, Frank. We got here. Carney hides his cash in the Isle of Man while Canadians foot the tax bill. Doesn't feel right at all. Not one bit. That's right. It doesn't feel good to me either. Professor Gil Leighton says the Isle of Man is a well-known tax haven for cheaters like Mark Carney. It's no surprise, therefore, to hear that he has used this place as yet another way to avoid paying Canadian taxes. He's registered his corporate HQ at the house of an 88-year-old man, quoting Ezra's story. And what do we got here? Isle of Man, 77% vaccinated, 55% boosted, highest case rate in the world. Oh, this goes back to 2022. I guess they were quite involved with the jibby jab back then. And of course, racing. Yes, a lot of racing. Isle of Man. And thanks for hanging out. I appreciate everybody who comes to the channel. Please like, share, subscribe. And at the end, we're just going to put a couple of facts here about the Isle of Man, especially when it comes to racing. We'll see you next time.
The island is well known for its traditional local dish of spuds and herring, or in Manx, pridas and herring. This dish consists of herring, potatoes, onion, and butter. There is a unique road system with no national speed limit in the Isle of Man. Notwithstanding, there are recommended speed limits in regards to certain areas.